Pastor David here. I wanted to take a second to answer the question, how does God accomplish his decrees? I've mentioned God's decrees or his plans for the unfolding of history. How does God bring those about? Well, if God is decreeing, planning how the world will happen, and it does happen the way he has planned, what does that look like under the hood? And I think the answer to that, how does God plan or accomplish his decrees? The answer is that God accomplishes his decrees through the works of creation and providence. The fact that God begins the world and organizes and sustains the world. He rules the world actively. So God organized everything in its creation, and he continues its ordered progression towards his plan. In fact, Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This is, I love saying, it's like saying top to bottom. God created everything from top to bottom, the heavens and the earth and everything in between. All of it came from God and exists for God on his plan. Revelation 4:11 says that God is worthy to receive glory because he created and sustains all things. But we see God not just start the world like a clock that he winds and then lets run, but actually God is actively involved in the unfolding of his plan across history. He created everything, but then he governs all of it. He rules in that word providence. Providence is a good theological word and a word for us to think through, in that God preserves, he keeps, and he governs. He rules over all his creatures and all their actions. So everything that goes on, there's not a flap of a butterfly's wings in the entire creation, not a speck of cosmic dust that is bouncing around a planet that God is not actively preserving and governing. He is bringing all of these things in progression to his purpose. He's accomplishing his plan in history. And this is seen in Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. He says in Matthew 5:45 that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. In fact, later in verse 6:26, he says, look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. All right. He also in Acts, it talks about God sending food and giving joy to all people. God is responsible for everything great and small in his creation. He has providential care in that he preserves and governs all of it. So that Daniel can talk about God elevating kings and deposing other kings. He gives life and he takes life away. He blesses and he curses. God is the one who is over all of it. And so the question, how does God accomplish his decrees? God accomplishes his decrees in works of creation and of providence. Now there are some special works inside that big category of providence that we want to unfold in the future, but I think it's helpful for us if we want to say, well, how does God bring about this plan that he guarantees will happen and that he's made for the whole world? God accomplishes his decrees through his works of creation and his works of providence. Providence being his preservation and rule or governing over his creatures and all of their actions.
Praise the mountain fixed upon it, mountain